Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. Coming up on today's episode, he's one of the funniest people in Hollywood, but you may not realize just how many of your favorite stars have relied on his words to bring down the house. He's been the secret weapon behind some of showbiz's most iconic moments. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest, writer, producer, and Hollywood Square, Bruce Vilanch. If this is your first time watching or listening to Still Here Hollywood, what took you so long? Even if you're a longtime fan, I have a favor to ask. If you feel it in your heart, please like and follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. Or if you watch on YouTube, please subscribe. And with both, it would be great if you rated and commented on your favorite episodes. Thank you so much. And now, on with the show. Bruce, I'm so glad to see you.
Thank you. Feelings mutual.
I think I first met you like in the mid-'80s. So it's been a while.
Could be. As we arc towards our mid-'80s.
Yes, as we do.
Not quite. But.
No, we're in the same decade. Tell me, what's new?
What's new? Oh, we'll have to pay Irving Berlin's estate if we go any further.
Or Etta James.
Really, she should only have a piece of it. I wrote a book. I've been out here, for 50 years, and during COVID, I was we were all on lockdown, and there were all these podcasts, and a friend of mine was booking podcasts, and he said, "You're sitting at home, just why don't you do these?" So I started doing them, and they were all hosted by people who were far younger than I am, and they asked me questions about shows that I had written for television before they were born. And I thought, how do they know about this crap? And I realized it's all on YouTube. So I started going on YouTube, and they all would ask the same questions. They would say, "Who said yes to the Star Wars holiday special? Who who thought that would work? And have they paid their debt to society?" So I thought, there's a book in this, because I was approaching memoir age, and reading everybody else's memoirs and looking for myself in the index, and I thought, I don't want to write one of those, but then I thought this would be a sort of a back-end way to get into a kind of a memoir. So it's a memoir of all the worst shows in television that I wrote, and a few other places.
What do you consider the worst shows ever written?
Well,
among the ones you've worked on.
Well, the Star Wars Holiday Special is certainly up there, and the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, which is an homage to Ann B. Davis as Alice the Maid.
Right.
And the Paul Lynde Halloween Special. I mean, there are a whole bunch of them that... And there's some even worse, but both of the ones they kept asking me about because they live on YouTube, so everybody knows about them. Anybody who watches that stuff on YouTube knows about them. So I started with those, and then a few other things. Some stuff that didn't get made, some stuff that got made but really disappeared so thoroughly that it's not even on the. It's not even on the internet. Those were buried in a grave that was shallow enough. That was not shallow. The others are all in shallow grave. Bubbled to the surface.
What's the most outrageous thing a celebrity ever asked you to write for them?
Wow, the most outrageous thing? First of all, nobody's ever asked me to write something deliberately outrageous. I mean, sometimes you'll come up with something and they'll go, "Oh, that's much. We can't do that." We were. At one point, Robert Wall and I were writing for Billy Crystal on one of the Oscar shows the year The Crying Game came out. Mm-hmm. And The Crying Game, spoiler alert, one of the stars of The Crying Game is actually a transgender. And, or actually, not so much transgender as non-binary, but has all the male equipment. And that's a plot point when this guy who he falls in love with discovers that about him. And so we thought Billy would come out dressed as that guy, only we would have like some sort of prosthetic hidden in the clothes that would make this insane bulge that would just be ridiculous. It was not in the movie. And we thought about it, and Billy said, I just can't do that on the Oscars. You can't, no. there's a certain line that you just don't want to cross. I mean, I don't think that may not exist anymore because they survived Seth MacFarlane and they survived Will Smith and a lot of people who lived to cross the line. So, but that springs to mind.
I'm trying to remember. Did you work for the Sun-Times or the Tribune in Chicago?
I worked first for a paper called Chicago Today that had been the American.
That's right.
It was the American, and the Trib owned it. And they folded it while I was there in the early 70s and moved me over to the Trib. So I finished out there at the Tribune. So I tell people I was at the Trib because if I say Chicago Today, they'd say, "Oh, that's nice. Where are you tomorrow?" That kind of.
Isn't Chicago where you and Bette Midler first hooked up, so to speak?
As it were, at a club called Mr. Kelly's, which was a famous nightclub when there were famous nightclubs. And she had just started. She had just come out of Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway, where she was one of the daughters who got married, the one who got married every night. And she would go down the street to the Improv and sing. And Bud Friedman, who owned the Improv, signed her as a client. And she subsequently got a record deal, and then he sent her to Chicago. He called me up because I worked with him on a previous client, on Freddie Prinz. And he called me and said, if you like this girl, would you write about her? So I went to see her, and she knocked me out. And I wrote about her, and she called me and said, "You're a very funny writer." And I said, "Well, you're very funny. You should talk more on stage." And she said, "You got any lines?" And that was the beginning, and it was all Chicago jokes. And then I went out on the road with her, and because I was the TV critic for the Trib at the time, I would be flown out on all these junkets with other TV critics. So I knew the TV critics of all the major papers. So if we would go to Cincinnati, I'd call the guy in Cincinnati, "What's happening? Who can we make fun of in Cincinnati?" And he would give me all the lowdown. And she would come on stage and she would have all this local material. And of course, her audience was very gay from the beginning. And, we used to say, "I hope nobody needs an emergency comb out because every hairdresser in Cincinnati is in this room." But so they loved the fact that she knew about their town because, most people, they just go, "Hello, Cleveland," and then that's the last reference they make, except maybe they'll talk about the baseball team, depending on who they are.
Yeah. I remember I saw her, the first time I saw her was at the Opera House in Chicago.
Yeah.
When she was doing the King Kong one where she comes out in the arm of King Kong.
Right, yeah.
That was like 75, I think.
That was.
She was amazing, very early on.
Uh-huh.
What is it about her, do you think, since you've observed so many stars over the years?
Yeah.
What was it about her that made her stick, made her hit and then stick?
She has, first of all, she's amazingly talented and she's brilliant. Those are two good things to have. Plus, she had two other good things: her legs, and she had a great rack. And was part of her act was to make fun of that, the fact that she knew you were looking at her. Because she wasn't conventionally pretty, but she was wild, and people made fun of the fact that no matter how hard she tried, she was never quite up to snuff. She never reached the glamour level, and that I think a lot of people identified with her. A lot of people felt like, well, look at her. She's using everything she's got. I should do that. I can do that, and it freed them up to be their authentic selves because they realized. You don't have to be Karen Carpenter. You don't have to be Gloria Loring, a singer, heavily coiffed and all of that. As long as you're real, as long as what you're doing is coming from something that's true, and so it was. She was also joyous. I mean, she was having a great deal of fun, and audiences responded to that. They got joyous, they got happy. San Francisco Chronicle called her America's Joy Buzzer. One of my favorite reviews ever. So that's I think is what happened. And then of course, her talent ran much deeper because she became a movie star and and iconic eventually.
I remember the last episode of the Carson Show where she
Yeah.
sat on the desk and sang to him, and then it was so touching.
It was beautiful. We did that. We sat at Mark Shaman, who wrote Hairspray,
Right.
which I was later in.
Edna.
Yeah, playing Edna. And Mark and Bet and I sat in his studio and came up with that. We wanted to. She'd been on the Carson Show like 34 times. He loved her. He took her to Vegas as his opening act, which did not work out. No, he used to have Phyllis McGuire, who was, glamorous and one of the McGuire sisters and all that. And his audience kind of looked at her and went, "What?" I remember we got into a cab in Vegas, Bet and I, and the cab driver says, "Have you seen that girl at the Sahara?" She says, "Yeah, no, I haven't. Tell me." "Oh, my God, what a mouth on her." "Oh, is she filthy?" And Bet is kind of shrinking in the back seat. So the hood's coming over. But that was Vegas, Vegas in 1973. It was a whole different world.
Yeah.
So, So anyway, so we created that thing to be the kind of set that she used to do for Carson back in the day, and it really worked well.
I believe I remember her telling stories about how she would go to his, maybe he told the story, go to his office in Manhattan when he was there and knock on the door and drop off her 8x10s and her resume and things of that nature. They had a great rapport.
She didn't have, she hadn't had enough money for headshots, so she looked up an actress named Barbara Lamar, who had died a long time ago, and used her headshots.
Really?
Yeah, just to get in the door. And then when she was in the door, she would tell them what she had done. But Barbara Lamar was very pretty.
Yeah. Well, I think Bet has a certain beauty to her.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, she has that kind of Renaissance beauty where they painted them as sort of as they were, and they were all they had noses, right? They all had sharp foreheads. I mean, you look at those Renaissance paintings; they all were not dewy-eyed, kind of hippie chicks.
Is there a joke or a line that you can recall writing for someone that just completely bombed?
Oh, yes. But sometimes it's circumstantial. Sometimes it just doesn't work. On the Oscars one year, when Billy was hosting, Glenn Cates was producing it, and he loved themes. And his theme was the Year of the Woman. And unbeknownst to, he had hired a guy named Chuck Workman, who was a terrific montage maker, clips, and did a lot of documentaries with clips, to do a clip package of great moments in movies from women. And we had never gotten to see it because it arrived wet, and it just, they looked at it and it went on the air. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And the audience was weeping, and we come out, and that was the year of Basic Instinct. And the joke was, it's ironic that we're celebrating women in film because the biggest part any woman had this year was Sharon Stone's in Basic Instinct. And of course, they cut to Sharon, who I thought might play along, but she was not having it. We were hoping she'd maybe cross her legs or something. And no, she was. So it really was like, yeah. But that was because they were recovering from this, clip package that had everything in it every kind of moment that you remember from the movies.
Yeah, Chuck Workman made some incredible montages.
Yeah, he did great stuff. That was just an unfortunate. But there are more of those. I don't know why I can't think of them.
We'll be back in a moment. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Is there an on-camera moment that makes you cringe?
Oh, yes, sure, plenty. I mean, I would try to write, these actors, like on the Oscar show, they're actors who don't who are movie stars, and they have their character, or they inhabit the character that they're playing in the movie. They have no stage persona. You know, Bet, Billy Crystal, Whoopi, all these people
Robin.
work every night as themselves. I mean, I used to say Shirley MacLaine knows who she is when she's on stage. She knows who she was. So it makes it much easier for her. But you get Keanu Reeves, and Keanu Reeves, there is no Keanu Reeves character. People think he's Bill or Ted or the guy from The Matrix, but there's no Keanu. I mean, and so we tried to write something for him in the kind of Bill and Ted voice, and it was just terrible. He played it. He was very sincere, but it just sat there. It just sat there like Luxenkugel, which is a Jewish dish that you try to eat with the turkey at Thanksgiving, but it's drier than the turkey. So it was awful. Johnny Depp is the same way. Johnny Depp had no Johnny Depp character. He kind of we came up with Captain Jack Sparrow meets Hunter Thompson.
You know, there's some people, I agree with you completely. I would tell people that I think a lot of actors and actresses, well, we don't use actress anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of actors become actors because they have no personality to call their own.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
And they can adopt
That's right.
whatever the script calls for.
But then occasionally you get somebody like Kathy Bates, who, if you give her a piece of material, she will find the voice to do it in, because there's no Kathy Bates persona in the movies. She's not that kind of a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Morgan Freeman is like that. I mean, although you tend to write for him as if he's God, because he plays that so well.
Yes, he does.
But it's funny when you give him something comic to play as if he's God doing it, because he's very wry, and it lands beautifully usually.
What was your first writing gig for a celebrity?
It was for Kay Ballard. I was in Chicago and I interviewed her. She was playing Mr. Kelly's, and she started telling me about all the people who had started writing for their careers writing for her. The name I remember is Fred Ebb, who with John Kander wrote Cabaret in Chicago and created Liza Minnelli's stage persona. And she said, well, you should write for me, Sweets. And so I started writing some stuff for her, and that was the first time I'd ever dipped my toe into that. So that when the time I met Bet, I had an idea of what I was doing.
Are you glad you did that? Are you glad you left the paper? Oh, yes. I can see. Stupid question, Steve, is coming out of your head.
I was very happy that I was there 5 years, but my line is I got tired of chronicling the achievements of others. I wanted to have a few myself. But of course, you're mostly chronicling the misachievements of people when you're at the paper. That's why journalists are generally so sour, because every day it's some new lunacy that they have to cover, like it's real. And they see the worst of everybody.
Tell me if I'm remembering this correctly. I think you related to me once, and if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. We'll cut it out. But I think you told me a story once about how Streisand was to present an award at the Oscars.
Yeah.
And beforehand, she came out and asked the audience to tell her which earrings looked better.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, she always did that. And in fact, we had a long rehearsal in which she couldn't decide whether she wanted to enter from stage right or stage left, because she had to wind up at a podium, which was stage right. And I said, well, if you come out stage right, you then go right to the podium. If you come out stage left, you can do a long cross on the stage and maybe show some leg as you're going along and do a little flourish and all that. Of course, that's what she wound up doing. In fact, I think she had Donna Karan bust a seam in the dress so she could stick her leg through it.
Great legs.
Yeah.
What was your favorite memory from scripting an Oscar show? Do you have one memory?
I've got a million of them. I don't know what the favorite one is. I suppose I tell this story because people always ask, what couldn't you do on the Oscar show? What did you have to drop? And it was Steve Martin's first show, and he was hosting, and he'd do the monologue, and then he would go off and come back on. And the joke was, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is my fly was open throughout the monologue. The good news is the camera puts on 10 pounds. And we all love this joke, and the censor said, go with it, it's funny. And it went on, and as he was about to step on stage, he said, I can't do the cock joke. We called it the cock joke. I can't do the cock joke. And I couldn't argue with him because it was 100 million people, you know. So,
Yeah.
So he felt that it would just be the wrong mood. And so, of course, the stage manager, I said, we're cutting the cock joke, and the stage manager said, the cock joke has been cut. And people, I saw Judi Dench going, cock joke? What? So, but that is any of those things that happened off stage, you know, when Michael Moore got booed by the stagehands because he was criticizing Bush and the war in Iraq, and we went to commercial, and backstage, Steve again, and Dave Barry was writing that year, Rita Rudner was writing that year, and we were all throwing jokes back and forth, and Steve came out after and said, it's wonderful backstage. The Teamsters are helping Michael Moore into the trunk of his car. And, you know, and it worked, and you kind of live for those moments because it's kind of like a play you didn't expect to make in the Super Bowl scores a touchdown. You know, it's like, wow. I'm in the biggest room in the world, and something we just came up with really scored.
That must be thrilling.
Yeah.
You weren't the year, were you, when David Letterman was doing the Uma?
Yes, that was Rob Burnett, who wrote the head writer of the Letterman show, who's gleefully owned it ever since. And Dave, you know, I said to him, you know, they didn't come here to have you, you know, TV boy make fun of their names, you know, and he didn't see it that way. He was, you know, Johnny Carson said to him the next day, I didn't do Karnak on the Oscars. You know, and because Dave tried to make the show give it a Letterman flavor,
mm-hmm.
and he you know, he lived with it for a year, and the following year Billy came back to host it, and it was the year of the English Patient, and so we had it was the first year that we put Billy into all of the movies in an opening montage, and in one of them, he is Ray Fiennes running from this biplane that is strafing him with machine guns, and Letterman's at the pilot, and he's going, Uma, Oprah, Uma, Oprah. And then everybody screamed, and then he never had to make a joke about it again. It was like, it was over. He had retired it.
You know, I accidentally on the internet found this routine with Ann Bancroft and Lee J. Cobb, where he's her psychiatrist, and she's talking about having a party. And she's been asked by one of the guests to interview everybody, and it's like they all had three-letter first names.
That's right.
Ava, you know.
Ava, Ava.
Yes.
Abba Eben.
Abba Eben, right.
Abba Eben.
And it was such a funny routine.
It's great. It was written by Tom Meehan, the late Tom Meehan, who wrote Annie and Hairspray, and was a collaborator of mine on the Tony Awards several times, and was a really funny writer, and was not at all what you'd expect. He wrote that before all of his Broadway hits. You know, he was friendly with Mel Brooks, I think, because he probably had worked on, when Mel was doing Broadway, I think he'd worked on something with him.
And since Anne was married to Mel.
Well, Anne was married to Mel, exactly right. I think that's probably how they met.
You became a celebrity in your own right. Was that always the plan?
Yes, but I didn't realize it. I mean, the plan was not working out. I was out here 20 years, and some people knew me. I mean, in the early 80s, I was on the Midnight Special, which was a show that was on NBC Fridays, 1 o'clock in the morning, because Carson was on from 11:30 to 1 in those days, and then we followed him on Friday nights. And so you can imagine the audience that was watching. I mean, everybody was sort of, you know, baked watching the thing. And video had just come in, MTV had just come in, and as a result, a lot of the bands that used to come and perform live, I mean, they taped it and it was shown in the middle of the night, but they'd perform it live. wouldn't do it anymore because they spent so much on videos. They said, just show the video. And NBC wouldn't let them do that. That was the competition, Don Kirshner's rock concert. They showed videos. We had to do everything live. So as a result, we had a 90-minute show and there wasn't enough music to fill it. So Dick Ebersol, who was the producer, came up with the idea of what later became Bill Maher's show, Politically Incorrect. And it was a bunch of people sitting around a dorm room talking about the events of the week, what looked like a dorm room. And I was one of them. And the host was David Steinberg, the comedian.
All right.
And so we shot one, and it aired, and then we came back to shoot the second week, and he said, David quit, you're the host. So for the next 2 years, I was the host of this thing that was on, nobody saw it. It was on at 1 o'clock in the morning, and every now and again somebody would say, oh, I saw you on TV. And I would think, oh yeah, the Midnight Special. It just never occurred to me. So I sort of, that was my first glimpse of that, of fame. And then after 20 years, I wound up on Hollywood Squares because they brought it back, and the producers of Comic Relief, Pat Lee and John Moffat, were producing it, and they asked Whoopi to be center square. And she said, oh, I think Vilanch should host the show. And they said, well, she's crazy, but let's not piss her off this early. So, you know, they sort of tested. They said, no, it's not going to work. He's you know, Louise, this is for the win. It's not going to happen. So they said, we'll put you in the square. They put me in the square just to the left of Whoopi, if that's possible. And I think I was supposed to tame her, but you know that never happens. But it was fun for 4 years. And when you're on television every night, as you know, for 4 years, everybody recognizes you. I mean, and they don't know where from necessarily. They think they've met you because they probably watched you at home while they were in a bathrobe. You know, so. And some of them I wouldn't mind if they did meet me that way. But the good thing about that was I had 20 years to observe how really famous people behave. And I determined I was not going to behave like some of them. And I was going to be nice to people because they will remember you as you know, the beast of Berlin or a nice guy. So I thought I'd rather be that.
Nice guy.
Nice guy, yes.
Not beast of Berlin.
No, it's...
Do you have a celebrity or a star that you've written for that you thought, I would do that again? Because you enjoyed their talent so much?
Yeah. Well, a lot of them, because I've written for, you know, a core group of people. Robin Williams I wrote for a long time. We collaborated. You know, I'd throw the material in the cage, and then we'd play it, and then he'd get up on stage and do it and embroider it and all of that. So, and Billy and Whoopi and Nathan Lane I still work with, and Shirley MacLaine and of course, you know, Bet, the champion. But there are a lot of them. I mean, when Bet started, her piano player was Barry Manilow, and one of the first three harlots was Melissa Manchester, and then we had as an offstage voice Luther Vandross, and they all wound up becoming stars, and I wound up writing for all of them, and
worked out. Yeah,
it worked out. Well, she was a sponge. She absorbed. Talented people were attracted to her, and so it's not a surprise. Later on, she just had a harlot reunion with Katie Sagal and Jennifer Lewis, and you know, a lot of other names that you wouldn't know, but who always work. But some of them, you know, leapt out and became stars in their own right.
We'll be back for more in a moment. After all these decades, what excites you? Keep it clean. About show business.
Well, it's varied. It's many and varied. I forget there's a Shakespeare line that I'm not coming up with, but no 2 days are ever quite the same, and things don't go on forever, and you move on to the next thing, and you're in the trenches with people, and you develop deep relationships with them, and you don't see them forever, and you come back and you pick up where you left off, and I think that's fabulous and unusual, and what you're doing is basically entertaining people, what you're going for, and you know, you're not. It's you know, there's a famous story about Hitchcock when in Vertigo, where she was asking about some motivation and he said, "Kim, it's only a movie." And that's gotten turned around to be a joke, like the neurosurgeon leaves an instrument in somebody's brain and somebody says, "Doctor, it's only brain surgery." It's not like we're making a movie.
Yeah.
Anything important.
What do you think about the current state of comedy and cancel culture and stuff like that?
Comedy's a landmine right now. It's a minefield because everybody is just so sensitive.
And afraid.
And cancel culture scared the bejesus out of everybody. And people became overly woke to the point where nobody had a sense of humor. And at this point, it's kind of like you have to establish that you're not mean-spirited. Put it in a context to make fun of things, but or find things you can make fun of that nobody is attached to. But it's very difficult to navigate those waters, and I don't envy people who have to get up every night and come up with new stuff. And unless they stake out a position. I mean, one of the things that all of the talk show hosts have done is staked out a position on the left so they can continue to make fun of the right. And that was a choice. I mean, if they were going to step on, you don't know any comics who are on the right making fun of the left. Well, there are some, but their audience is that audience. Theo Von's a friend of mine, and he plays Vegas and all that, but who goes to see it? MAGA people go to see him because they subscribe to his view.
Who's the funniest person you've ever worked with off stage or off camera?
Oh my gosh! Oh my God! Even if I don't say bet, then I will. I will lose my gay card and the toaster that Ellen gave me. But there are so many. What is more interesting to me, who's so funny, is people are in character. Robin Williams, you would sit and have dinner with him, and somebody would come to the table, and he would become Robin Williams. Rickles was like that. Rickles would be having a serious conversation with you, and somebody would come over and, "What do you want, you hockey puck?" Look at that! Look at the jewelry on your wife. What is she, signaling ships at sea? And he would go into his stuff, and then they'd go away, and he'd turn back, and he would say, "But I think what's really happened in the Holocaust was," and he would be, So that's the people who have that persona that they can turn on and off. That is kind of amazing. But of course, sometimes they're serious all the time in real life, and they're funny when they get on stage. But most of the people I've worked with they're a good time. You'll have a good time with them.
Not to step on anything you've said, but I had the opportunity and pleasure to interview Robin Williams on a number of occasions, 6 or 7 times, I would say.
Wow.
And it was the same thing. He could turn it on and turn it off. I'd had people say to me, "Isn't he hard to interview?" Hell no. You throw a question and back up.
You just press play.
Oh, I thought he was the most marvelous person.
Yeah, but he was like that. But that was that was what he did professionally. I mean, he had another side to him that was totally not that. And I think that when Robin got his original diagnosis of Parkinson's, I think he went into a depression because he couldn't be Robin. He didn't have the physicality anymore, and I think that really bothered him. Of course, we later discovered that he had that rare condition that often involves suicide, which is what finally happened. But I think even before that came in, I think he was profoundly upset because while he enjoyed acting and doing serious parts in little movies, he couldn't do the kind of freewheeling stuff. He was fast and on the money, and a lot of that went away.
Yeah. What is the line? Is there a line, or do you find out when it happens, between too edgy and too far?
Well, I don't know. I would love to say yes. Would you tell your mother this joke? But that doesn't mean it's not funny. It's just like it's inappropriate. So I think we all know what those are. The thing of it is, you don't realize that that the culture has changed. For example, I'm fat, and I used to do a lot of fat stuff, and now I'm told that's body shaming, and I'm told by the audience that instead of laughing, they go, "Oh," because if I talk about myself and Lizzo in a dressing room, and they go, "Oh, can't say that about her," And I said, "Well, she was huge at the time. Now she's still huge, but she's thinner now, but she's still huge professionally." But I discovered that was, I thought, wow, that really is is a shift, and I was unaware of that. And I would, I can say these. I remember I did a joke, a Jewish joke, and I said, and somebody said, "How can you that stuff about Jews?" I said, "Because I'm Jewish, I can do that." "No, you can't. That's no excuse." And I just kind of went, "Excuse me." Just because you're Gentile, you can make Gentile jokes. Just because you're in the majority, you can find that amusing. But I just thought it was hysterical that it's come to that.
Do you still do shows yourself?
Occasionally, I do. I never did stand-up. I was never a club comic. I did what I call sit-down. I would
like
tell
the Gardenia
stories.
Club?
At the Gardenia, yeah. I would tell stories. And sing a couple of special material ribald songs. But I haven't done that in a while. I did it off-Broadway years ago for about 3 months, and that was fun. But occasionally, there are enough benefits where I can get up and exercise that demon. I did 3 of them last week.
Really?
Benefits are us.
What are they for?
They're gay charities, usually AIDS charities, Jewish charities. That one was for the Ali Forney Center, and I was in New York. That's Teenage Gays and Trevor Project. I just did a thing for, which is a suicide prevention charity aimed at gay teens. And I forget. My manager was getting an award, so I did it it was for his charity, which was Corpulent Children of Grosse Pointe, something like that. I don't know. It was.
Have you noticed a big change in the entertainment industry about how gays are represented and treated?
Yeah, there has been. I think it has to do with visibility. I think that the AIDS was like a Holocaust, and the Holocaust led to the state of Israel, and AIDS led to the political movement that was just about outing people, becoming a movement about saving people's lives, and pressuring the government, and it got very professional and wound up making a lot of people realize the only way that they were going to be the first-class citizens that they needed to be was to come out. And I remember somebody saying to me, "What happened? Did the mothership land? All you people are here. All you gay people are all over the place. Where were you?" I said, "Well, we were in closets." And I think once that happened in the general population, then you saw pride, which was about letting people know who you really were, your true self. I think that it's very easy to hate in the abstract, but when somebody is sitting across the table from you at Thanksgiving dinner and says to you, "By the way, when you do a fag joke, you're talking about me, your nephew," that changes people's minds. They begin to realize that people are people. And so I think that became a story that the entertainment industry could tell. And so more of that began to happen. And the big thing that AIDS did was when people lost a partner of many years, they found they had no legal standing. The family would swoop down and take everything. And they had no legal stand on, and the only way to make that was to codify those relationships, to go for marriage equality. And once marriage equality happened, which is 10 years already, that made everybody the same. It put you on the same footing with everybody else. And as a result, a lot of stories began developing, and people began realizing that it was more. We didn't come up with marriage equality so we could all run to Vera Wang and get gowns. We came because it was a legitimate civil rights issue. And that's not sexy, but it's real.
Yeah. I should tell everybody, Bruce was the first person who wrote to me when it was announced we were going to start doing this Still Here Hollywood podcast and volunteered his services. It's taken a little while, but he's been busy. And I appreciate your gesture. Because in this town you never really know if somebody is being sincere.
Oh. No, I'm always sincere, but they figure I just want to hit on you.
You never did. We have time.
Okay. Well, seems to me.
Hey, is there, I'm jumping around here, is there a host you feel was underrated of the Oscars, a host of the Oscars, who was underrated, didn't get their due?
That's a very good question, because I don't know who was doing the rating at the time. I mean, it varies from year to year. They say, "Oh, he was okay. He was good. It worked very well." It would be hard to answer. I mean, I suppose there were a couple of Whoopi years that were better than other Whoopi years, but I mean, my favorite, the most unusual, was Hugh Jackman, because we had done 2 Tony Awards before that, and so he knew what the job was, but he was not the standard issue host for the Oscars. He was a song and dance man who was a big action movie star and a romantic leading man, and he was going to come out and sing and dance and carry on, and something he didn't do was stand up there and do a monologue and tell jokes. But I mean, he did do sort of one, but it was just to lead into a number. So that was the most unusual one, because he didn't come with the skill set that they always come with. I'm a comic and I can hold the room and all that. That was he holds the room with other things.
Do you think the Kodak Center has worked out well for the Oscar
it seems to.
Yeah.
It seems to. I mean, I think that they got inadvertently lucky when Cirque du Soleil didn't work. Cirque du Soleil had a 10-year deal.
Oh, I forgot that.
The show called Iris, spelled iris like the flower, but it was Iris for them. Iris of the camera was what they were. It was a Hollywood-centric show, and it didn't work out. But they took that theater, which had a lot of deficiencies, because David Rockwell was forced to design it for a specific space that was never supposed to be a theater, was supposed to be a garage. And so he had to do a lot of wonky things that he didn't like doing, but he had to do them. And they came in and they ripped up the stage house because they were putting in effects that they thought would be there for 10 years. But when they quit after a couple of years, suddenly you had all this new sandbox to play with. And you could do things with elevator stages, and the proscenium had been enlarged and all that kind of stuff. So it makes the show look bigger than it did previously. And so that happened. Of course, people have gotten used to it in 20 years, but you never could get as many people in as you could at the Shrine, which had 2,000 more seats than the Dolby, or it was the Kodak. And then in a bankruptcy hearing, the bankruptcy judge said, "You got to ditch some of these naming things you've done. Get rid of stop paying the developer to have your name on that theater where they do the Oscars." And so, of course, Kodak went out and Dolby jumped in, because Dolby is all the sound people, and so they love to be attached to it. A footnote there for trivia fans of Hollywood history.
When that comes up.
Exactly.
Were you involved with the Rob Lowe Snow White?
Oh, yeah, that was my first show.
Oh, it was?
And it's the last chapter in my book, yes. I wanted one Oscar chapter, and that was a good one.
I didn't get that far yet. It's the last chapter.
It's the last chapter, and it's, sort of next to the last chapter. There's a coda also. But that is the last chapter. It was my first show. It was produced by the very flamboyant Alan Carr, who I now have to say is not the Alan Carr from England, who was a big star in England as a talk show host, Alan Carr. And a lot of my friends from Britain say, Alan Carr produced the Oscars. No, different Alan Carr. So, but he produced Grease, and on Broadway, La Cage aux Folles, and also in the book is the Village People movie, The Can't Stop the Music, which I wrote the first 342 drafts. And so yeah, he conscripted me, and I did the show. And Rob Lowe was one of his ideas, one of his bad ideas.
What was the Tina Turner song he did? Proud Mary. With
Snow White. And this is like, poor Snow White, she was a big star, and then that happened, and then she went to sleep, and then she came back as Snow Woke, and that bombed. So, I mean, I feel bad for, and they closed her coffee shop on Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, they did?
Yes, the Snow White, and in fact, that figured in the lawsuit, because Disney was claiming a trademark infringement, and Snow White's in the public domain. She was written in 1588. And the Snow White coffee shop, nobody ever said, "Oh, you're infringing upon our trademark." So, but it was that's an interesting story, and it is in the book about how that.
You studied journalism at Ohio State, Buckeye you.
I did, my Buckeye me, and I go back and do a lot of fundraisers.
Do you?
Yes, which gives you. It distresses me because I think the pool of distinguished alumni must be very shallow if they're coming to me for these things. Although, I mean, I'm sure there are people who just don't identify as, as Buckeyes. But because when I was there, Eileen Heckert was the big actress who came out of there. And mostly it was sports guys, and Ernie Pyle, who was a famous war correspondent, and Thurber, he was the big one. James Thurber was the big one.
I liked Eileen Heckart.
Oh,
she was a good
actress.
actress.
I got to know her after college. Hecky. We called her Hecky, and her son Luke Yankee produces. He's produced at a theater in Long Beach, and actually that's how I got to meet her, through Luke.
I'm Facebook friends with him.
Oh well, yeah. There you go.
By the way,
there you go.
As she won the Oscar for Butterflies Are Free.
Butterflies Are Free, which I saw. Great. Well, she was. I was a summer intern at the Detroit Free Press, and they sent me up to Traverse City, Michigan, Cherry County, in the mitten of Michigan, because there was a summer stock theater, and they were breaking in a new play prior to Broadway. It was called Butterflies Are Free, and it starred Keir Dullea, who I had a big crush on. I know, even though Noel Coward said, "Well, Keir Dullea, gone tomorrow." But I had a big crush, so I said, I'll do that story. So I drove up to the mitten, and Maureen O'Sullivan, who was Jane to Tarzan and later Mia Farrow's mother, and so Ronan Farrow's grandmother, was playing that part. And Blythe Danner was the girl. And I saw it, and Maureen O'Sullivan was not happy, and it really didn't work. It was interesting, but didn't work. And then they said, "Don't write about it. We have somebody else coming in. She's going to leave." And that was Hecky. Eileen Heckert slid in and did it. And of course, then it was a big hit. And later, while I was in Chicago at the Tribune, Eve Arden was doing the national tour, and I got friendly with her. And she left, and Gloria Swanson came in.
Really?
Prior to Broadway. She went to Broadway and played it for almost a year. And she was a trip. She was quite a trip. Yeah, the nice thing is I got to interview all these people for the trip. It was all the visiting firemen, they used to call them,
Well, Bruce, I think I'm done.
Well, all right. Yeah, well, when you say Gloria Swanson, that kind of closes the book.
No, it doesn't.
We had faces then.
Yes. I'm still big. It's the pictures that got small.
That's right. The pictures.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I've enjoyed
pleasure.
this.
You're kidding?
I've enjoyed you for years.
Oh, it was great, and it gave me the reason to get my visa renewed for the Valley.
If you are having thoughts of suicide, there's help. You can talk to a trained counselor at any time of the day or night at the 988 Suicide and Crisis Line by dialing or texting 988 on your mobile phone. Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerle. Theme music by Brian Sanishin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.